I see that it's fake, I'm like, what do you actually do? Like, who are you as a person? That's what interests me. Welcome to the Hypersensitive Podcast. What is up, everybody? I'm your host, Chrissy Mazaliski, and I am so excited to be here with you today. Seriously, it is our first episode. It is the first episode. I just want to get right into it. I have been thinking about doing some form of content creation for a while now, and I had no idea what it was going to look like, but here we are. And I'm sure you're like, I have no idea who you are. I've never seen you in my life. I've never heard of you. And fair. So I figured we could take this first episode to get to know each other, and then we'll dive into what the content of the show is going to look like and the structure and all of that stuff. But I realize that everybody is a podcast now. Literally everybody. Your doctor, your mother, your brother, your cat, your dog, your DoorDash guy. Everybody has a podcast. So with me starting off at you never hearing of me before, let's just get into why I'm doing this in the first place. I knew that at the beginning of 2023, I was going to start to make some changes in my life. And I had no idea what that was going to look like, but I had made an agreement with myself that I wasn't going to go back to doing the work that didn't fulfill me anymore. And it was making me very sick. I was going to start to, as scary as it is, start to say yes to the things that I really want to do. Doesn't that sound insane? It's scary to say yes to the things I want to do. But for me, it was in many ways because it meant that possibly I'm sacrificing an opportunity or I'm sacrificing a paycheck. For context, I live and work in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. I work in film and television production behind the camera. That's why you've never seen me in your life. But we work a lot of hours in film, crazy hours. Like 12 hours is a short day. We work upwards towards 16, 18, 20-hour days. That's normal. We all do that. And so when I looked at myself in the mirror last year, I was like, this is it. I cannot do this to my body anymore. I'm not that old. And my hair is graying. My hair is falling out. I feel so unfulfilled and depressed and anxious. And I had no idea what anxiety and depression really was until I got into this industry. I remember my mom telling me that she had an anxiety, and not the depression part so much, but the anxiety aspect, I just was like, that can't be real. And that was 7 years ago. And I remember the first time I felt it. I remember clenching my chest, and I couldn't breathe outside. And I was like, oh my God, this is anxiety. This is what she's talking about, this. And prior to working in this industry, I'd never experienced that. Maybe I had, but not. We never talked about mental health and how we were feeling. And so a lot of my life, I just went along with all of this feeling and emotion and not being able to properly express it. And now I feel like we're in a place and space in the social media world where we can dive into that. And so that's why I wanted to start this podcast. I wanted it to be about real people experiencing real things, the ups and downs of life. I don't want to dwell on the past, but there's part of the past that is why we're experiencing some of the things we are in the present. And so some of that I do want to talk about. And I'm going to open this space up to talking about some of the things that are close to me and things that some of the closest people to me in my life don't even know about. And so I just want to leave that space open. The structure of the show is going to be topics with guests and also solo episodes with myself, talking about things that have to do with feeling and emotion. And that may or may not be for you. And if it's not, that's cool. That's okay. But I feel like we're in a space in life where more people are experiencing mental health problems or issues more than we've ever talked about before. And I just want to be able to connect. I've always considered myself to be an extroverted person. I get my energy from being around people, from like what excites me is being in a room full of people. And that's a complicated thing because not all people are great, but I do love people for the most part. And I love to be in conversation. I feel like I never run out of questions to ask or my curiosity for people. I feel like humans are interesting at their core. Everybody has a story. Everybody's really fucking cool. But I also feel like when we're trying to put on this facade of being like really fun and creative and dope online, that it actually takes away from the person. And I see that it's fake. And I'm like, what do you actually do? Like, who are you as a person? And that's what interests me. So I asked myself the same question. I was like, what is it that I'm putting out there? Like just pretty photos and like vague, exciting moment highlights of my life. I think that there's more to who I am than just what I've been posting. And so a part of me just wanted to get real and raw with all of you. And the idea came from me just posting memes probably about a year ago. I was like scouring the internet, laughing at the deranged, ridiculous things that people would say and come up with. And I found it so relatable that I just started posting it mindlessly on my story. And I was like, okay, people may relate, they may not. But I had no idea that I was going to get such a response from it. And I was like, okay, people are just as messed up in a funny way, like just as fucked up as I am. And so I was like, what other things and what other ways can I connect with people on that actually matter? And believe me, I love the creative aspect. I love the beauty. I love the thirst traps. I love all of it that people are posting online. But there has to be more to people. And you may not be like me where you're comfortable sharing some of your story, but I feel like we're all going through it regardless. And so I really wanted this podcast to be about that. I want it to be about all of the embarrassing experiences I have having ADHD. I want to get into the past a little bit. I don't want to dwell on it, but I think that a lot of things that happened in the past are part of the reason we are the way we are today. And I just want to talk about life's crazy ebbs and flows. Hopefully you feel into that with me. That's the whole point of this. And my story sort of starts at the beginning. I grew up in Regina, Saskatchewan. I'm a prairie girl originally. Kind of not really. I mean, I grew up in the city. I was raised by my grandparents and my aunt, and I always loved animals. I had an extremely unstable childhood, and it really shaped the way that the rest of my life was going to play out. And I see that more than ever today. And when I was talking to my therapist, she was like, "Are you sure you're ready to unpack what you're going to unpack on this show?" And I was like, I don't know if I'm ready, but I want to. It's totally fucking scary because I get the internet is forever. So here we are. We're going to start doing it anyway. I just never felt like I was enough in my life. I felt like I wasn't intelligent enough. I felt like I was a failure. I felt like the beginning of my life, I was a really confident child. And it wasn't until teachers and parents, not my parents, but other people around me that would tell me that I was a bad kid because of the way that I looked. And we'll get into that in future episodes. You're like, what do you mean the way that you look? Aren't you just like some light-skinned person? It's a different place in the prairies. and it was a different time. I was diagnosed with ADHD, and back then we didn't know how ADHD really affected the brain. It was just like I talked too much, I didn't pay attention, I was rambunctious, I was too hyper, and so they were like, she's a bad kid, put her on medication. My parents put me on medication for a little while, and then they were like, she's just a kid. I don't really think that this is what she needs. And so eventually I went without it, and then I struggled the rest of my way through elementary, and I struggled through high school, and when I was a kid, the only thing that really made me happy and brought me joy was movies. I loved movies so much. I just knew that when I grew up, I was going to work in film. I didn't know I was going to work in film production behind the camera. I thought that I was going to be an actor because that's what I wanted to do originally. But nonetheless, I made it here. But that was what I loved. I had so much emotion, and whether that be the ADHD that makes us a sensitive person, or whether it was the extreme trauma that I went through, or whether it's just the way that I'm built. I don't know the answer to that, but I just knew that I wanted to do something with this, because in therapy for the last few years that I've been going, it wasn't until fairly recently that I realized that this was something that could be seen as a positive. That being an extra sensitive person could be something I could work with. And so that's what this is about. And when I was young, I kind of had that idea, but I didn't know how to put that into words because we weren't even talking about mental health. I just knew that I had a lot of emotion wrapped up inside myself. I covered it up my entire life with humor, which I still kind of do. But I feel like without that, I don't even know where I would be. I feel like laughing is a release. So I don't want this podcast to be all dark, but I do want it to be real. So after high school, I used all of my savings and I went to acting school. Growing up, we had absolutely no money. We were poor. And I just knew that my life was going to have to be what I could make of it. And I also wanted to be helpful to my parents. So I was like, how can I make money? How can I do something in my life that is fulfilling and exciting to me? And I always found a place in performance. It was like, again, I could take all of this emotion and curiosity for people and like put it somewhere. So that made a lot of sense to me. But right after high school, right before I went to school, I actually worked in the wellness industry. I worked at a health and wellness clinic. It was a weight loss clinic. So I got really interested in health and wellness and supplementation and brain health. So that's always been a big part of my life as well. When I had originally thought I was going to do some content back in 2017, I thought I was going to do like food and cooking videos. And then work just took off in production and I just never got around to it. But after I worked at that clinic, I went to school in Toronto. I went to acting school, fell in love with it, loved every second of it. And then I had to come back home because I ran out of money. I had no money. And so I got back to working at the weight loss and wellness clinic. I became a regional manager for them. And then I did what any millennial would do. And I went traveling. And I went and spent and wasted all of my money. And so I spent the next few years working again, but I ended up working 2 jobs and I didn't work at the weight loss clinic anymore. And I still had absolutely no money. I had nothing. And I was like, how the hell am I going to get back out to Toronto and like go and act and go and be happy with my life? I never did make it back to Toronto. I ended up going out to Vancouver and I was totally resistant to the idea at first, but there was a few things that led me that way. And so I had a friend that worked in film production, and that's how I got started. It's been a crazy ride ever since. I don't regret any of it, but I certainly don't want to wake up in 10 years from now and actually regret not doing what I really want to do. And that is talking to people and connecting. And I have no idea where this podcast is going to take us or take me, but I'm just like, I'm along for the ride. I'm just trying to heal my nervous system, and I want to just have fun doing it. So that's really what this is about. I do have a link that I will share with all of you in my bio. And you can share with me what you think of the episodes, things that you might want to see or listen to in the future, and I'll make that accessible so that way you can share your feedback with me. It's anonymous, so you can just write to me and let me know. And this is a new channel. This is a new podcast, so I would love and so appreciate if you could go out, comment, and like, subscribe, and follow on all of my social platforms. It would mean the world to me. I just am so grateful for you being here and following along with this journey. Thank you so much for today. We will have episodes dropping every Tuesday, so this podcast is every week. I will have some guests that are going to be joining us over the coming season. I have naturopaths, entrepreneurs, DJs, therapists, writers. So there's a lot coming up, and I hope you all stay tuned. So we'll catch you next time. See you next week.